Hi guys, it's Mr. DeFelice. Today we're going to work on interval notation with inequalities. So far we've learned how to graph inequalities in a number line. Now we're going to apply that and build on that knowledge with intervals. So the first thing, inequalities can also be represented using interval notation. So let's first understand what an interval is. In the box below, list any words that come to mind when you see the word interval. So for me, when I see the word interval, some words that come to mind would be like a period of time. So there's a beginning and an ending. It's something that has 2 points in it. It's space between things. Okay, so here's the official definition of interval. An interval is a region between 2 points. This is the definition we're going to use for our math class. So if you think about it, like from geometry last year, it looks like a line segment. With an interval is between these 2 points, these 2 red dots on the ends here. So there are 2 types of interval notation used to represent inequalities. We use the parentheses symbols or we use the brackets. And it's similar to what we learned about yesterday with the open circle and the closed circle. So the parentheses, those are going to use the open circle, and the brackets are going to use the closed circle, which means it includes the number versus not including the number. So let's look at some examples and apply it to what we learned yesterday. If I asked you to graph this inequality on this number line, you would put circles on the numbers on the ends of the statement. So I'm going to put a circle at -7 and a circle at 3. Because it's the less than or equal to sign, I should fill in the circle. Anytime that line is there, it includes that number, so it's a part of the range or the interval between the numbers. And then now I can just shade. So I'm shading in between. So what that looks like in interval notation is I use the numbers on the ends, -7, 3, and I just put that in brackets, because the brackets mean it includes those numbers. It's like another way of writing the less than or equal to sign. Another example, 1, I put an open circle, over to 5, shade in between. This is open because of the symbol not having the less than or equal to, it's just less than. So it's an open circle at 1 and an open circle at 5. So my range, or my interval, goes from 1, 5. And this time I use parentheses to represent that interval, because it does not include the 5 or the 1 when I say numbers that fit into this range. You can have examples where you have one of each. So here I'm going from -8, which is included, up until 0, which is not included. So that's an open circle. And then I can shade these in between. So my range, or my interval, goes from -8 with a bracket up until 0 with a parentheses, because -8 includes the less than or equal to symbol, and the 0 is not included. And then the last one, we're just flipping it, starting at 5 with an open circle, up until 10 with a closed circle. And then I can shade that over. The 5 has an open circle, so it has a parentheses, versus the 10, which is closed and has a bracket. So let's do a little summary on the next page in the back. Which number only had brackets in the inequality statements? So if I look, the number that only had brackets was number 1. My answer only had brackets. And what kind of inequality symbol did it have? Well, that one only had the less than or equal to. So number 1 only had brackets. It had this symbol. I'm just going to draw an arrow And then this is the symbol that we saw, the less than or equal to. So the brackets went with the less than or equal to. Which number had only parentheses? So the only parentheses that I saw for the whole problem was number 2. This is the only problem that gave me 2 sets of parentheses. So this would be number 2 had parentheses. And it had this symbol. Just the less than. That had looked a little bit nicer. Okay? And then which numbers had parentheses and brackets? Well, the parentheses and brackets were found in 3 and 4, and that's because I had a combination of either less than or equal to and less than, or less than and less than or equal to. So it just depended on the problem. But for each of those ones, I had 1 parentheses and 1 bracket based on the location of the number. So that was numbers 3 and 4. And they had the less than and the less than or equal to symbol. So in summary, the big thing here that we've learned, I'm just going to put it off on the side over here. Open circles are with less than and also greater than. And now I'm also going to use parentheses. So I have 3 different ways representing the same data. Closed circles have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, and now we're going to use brackets as well, depending on the interval notation. So this will be a nice little key to help you answer your questions. So I'm going to do the first one with you, and then I'll let you finish these. Once you finish these, check in with me, and then you can move on to today's assignment. So if I'm going to put this inequality onto this graph, I'm going to first start off with my dots at the numbers that are listed. So I'm going from -7 until 0. My range is in between -7 and 0. That's all the numbers that will make this statement true. So at -7, it's a less than or equal to, so I'm going to put a solid dot. At 0, it's also less than or equal to, so I'm going to put another solid dot, and then shade it. Make sure you're using a pencil when you're doing this, because if you make a mistake, it's going to be hard to scratch out and make it understand what you did. Okay. So because I had the less than or equal to sign that was a solid dot, that means I'm also using brackets. So when I use my interval notation, for this inequality, it goes from -7 to 0, and I'm going to put it in brackets because that matches up with my symbol here. Try the rest of these on your own and then check in with Mr. D, and then that should be it. We'll have some practice problem after these. Any questions? Make sure you ask.